Hello friends, Jim here at Science Talk. As you have noticed, no doubt lately, I've been covering a lot of stories dealing with what happens to crops, nutritional values, and the yields of crops as the planet warms. Well, I have a report here from the World Meteorological Organization, WMO, and basically what they're stating is that as the world is warming and warming faster, hunger is also growing. And basically what they're asserting is that climate change is speeding up, and with the speeding up is causing problems with sufficient crops to feed the growing human population as well. What's going on here? Okay. The evidence that hunger and malnutrition are once again on the rise is published in a new report from the WMO on the state of the global climate in 2018. Now, this report, the WMO, will be presented at the UN's Climate Action Summit this coming September 23rd. It's called the State of the Climate Report, and this will be this report I'm going to share with you now is one of their contributions. So this report draws on studies, data, material that scientists, UN agencies, and even meteorological services from various countries provided. And basically this indicating that the physical signs and the impacts of climate change are speeding up due to ever increasing concentrations of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. And of course this is pushing temperatures to dangerous levels as far as humans are concerned. Also going along with this, of course, is record sea level rise. And basically, we're seeing higher and higher land and sea surface temperatures than has been previously recorded. Now, here's an interesting thing. CO2 levels were at 357 parts per million when the first statement in this series of reports from the WMO was published in 1994. So if you look, so from 1994 to say 2018, that's what, 24 years? So in 24 years, if we accept, say, 410, other places have measured higher, but let's go with 410, then we're looking at what, 53 parts per million rise over 24 years. That's a little over 2 parts per million per year. That is not insignificant. And of course, I just did a story where greenhouse gases are expected to go ever higher for 2019. Now, it should also be noted that the start of 2019 has seen warm record daily winter temperatures in Europe, unusual cold in North America, East Coast, and that's due to the polar vortex, along with huge, very hot, searing heat waves in Australia. And of course, in January, Southern Hemisphere, that's their summer. Arctic and Antarctic ice extent is well below average, and I've shared that information with you folks as well. So in a statement from the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, he states that the data released in the report gives, his words, gives cause for great concern. He goes on, the past 4 years were the warmest on record, with the global average surface temperature in 2018 approximately 1 degree above the pre-industrial baseline. There is no longer any time for delay. Now, the World Meteorological Organization Secretary General in Palace, he said key findings of this statement include the striking consecutive record warming recorded from 2015. The continuous upward trend in the atmospheric concentrations of the major greenhouse gases, the increasing rate of sea level rise, and the loss of sea ice in both northern and southern polar regions. Basically, I've shared these findings with you, but here we have it being encapsulated, if you will, by the WMO. One particular concern highlighted is food security. In the words of the report, quote, exposure of the agricultural sector to climate extremes is threatening to reverse gains made in ending malnutrition. It continues, new evidence shows a continuing rise in world hunger after a prolonged decline, according to data compiled by UN agencies including the Food and Agricultural Organization, FAO, and World Food Program. In 2017, the number of undernourished people was estimated to have increased to 821 million, partly due to severe droughts associated with the strong El Nino of 2015 to 2016, close quotes. As I've stated with you guys numerous times before, we have really a limited landmass that is available for human use. And we have, with ever increasing population, we're putting great stress and strain on that landmass to use for housing, conduct business, as well as, grow, raise our food. So you throw in climate change aspects that threatens the crops because warmer temperatures, plants don't necessarily like very warm temperatures, especially the C3, which are most commercial crops of C3 plants. And now you have some issues with failed harvest, crops failing, the harvest not as much as hoped, and not to mention that the nutritional value decreases with warmer temperatures that you grow the food in. So they are quite correct in highlighting this concern about food security. The FAO says the absolute number of undernourished people, those facing chronic food deprivation, as I said, reached 821 million in 2017, up from around 804 million in 2016. So basically, in 1 year, 17 million more people were added to those categorized as undernourished, facing chronic food deprivation. The World Meteorological Organization report also singles out the plight of those forced by climate change to leave their homes and become refugees, either within their own countries or abroad. Out of 17.7 million people classified as internally displaced persons, IDPs, tracked by the International Organization for Migration, the IOM, don't you just love all these acronyms? By September 2018, over 2 million people have been displaced by disasters linked to weather and climate events. According to the UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR, Protection and Return Monitoring Network, about 883,000 new internal displacements were recorded between January and December 2018, of which 32% were associated with flooding, 29% with drought, and these most likely occurrences exacerbated by climate change. Now, let's also consider what's going on in the Middle East. They're basically saying sections of the Middle East will be so hot and basically uninhabitable by 2060. That's 41 years off. So if you've got a 20-something, that's within their lifetime. So that's and so now that's going to create more climate refugees. So now you're putting more stress and strains on finite resources. And not to mention all the political upheaval that such things brings with it. I'm not going to touch that with a 20-foot pole. This is science. I'm not going to talk politics here. So there's definitely a situation going on here. Now, the WMO also expresses concern about a range of impacts of climate change on the global environment, including reduced levels of oxygen in the oceans, as well as increasing acidic oceans. Remember, as you increase temperature, solubility of gas decreases. Sea surface temperatures are up. Not going to dissolve as much oxygen, and for that matter, CO2. I just did a video talking about what's going on with CO2 and the calcite compensation depth, etc. Since the middle of the last century, there's been an estimated 1 to 2% decrease in the amount of oxygen in the world's oceans. And that's according to UNESCO's Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, UNESCO IOC. I think I should call this, label this video the acronym soup or something. It's, the acronyms here. In the past decade, the oceans have absorbed around 30% of CO2 emissions of human origin. Absorbed CO2 reacts with the seawater. I've explained that process with you before, right? Creating carbonic acid, leading to ocean acidification. You know that. Okay? And it can affect the ability of marine organisms, such as mollusks, corals, reef-building corals, plankton, anything that has a shell around it, especially if made of calcite or aragonite, even silica, right? And it affects the ability to build and maintain these shells and other skeletal material. And of course that ties into the calcite / aragonite compensation depth. Observations in the open ocean over the last 30 years have shown a clear trend of decreasing pH, meaning increasing acidity. In line with previous reports and projections, ocean acidification is ongoing and the global pH levels continue to decrease, according to UNESCO IOC, Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission. So there you have it. We have WMO publishing reports saying that food security is on the increase, that the number of people who are considered malnourished or chronically deprived of food is increasing and increasing dramatically. And we see what's going on with increasing CO2 levels in the atmosphere, decreasing pH, decreasing O2 levels in the ocean, and what that means for the organisms. And of course, translate that through the rest of the food chain. It's you're going to have problems with the tertiary consumers, that their numbers may start dwindling, and many of those tertiary consumers are species that humans harvest for their own protein consumption. So that there's another angle as to the food issue, not just in crops, but in decreased harvesting from the sea. So it's a stark reminder, stark warning as to what's coming down the pipe if we don't get our asses in gear and our act together. Thank you for your time. Hey friends, this is Jim reminding you to subscribe and share my videos. Also, don't forget to click the bell so that you know when I drop a video in. And I'm also asking for you to please support the work that I do by becoming a patron at patreon.com. Details in the description box below. Thank you for your continued support.